In today's video, I'm flying Scoot, the budget little sister of Singapore Airlines. And as far as I know, they're the only airline in the world to offer an adult-only cabin, so we're trying that out as well, on a 2.5-hour flight from Singapore to Bali in their Boeing 787 Dreamliner. To answer the age-old question, to scoot or not to scoot? We started off by wandering around the Jewel, which, by the way, is incredible, even if the waterfall isn't switched on this early in the morning. I thought the indoor rainforest at Doha Hamad Airport was impressive, but this is just on another level. Definitely worth visiting if you're in Singapore. Scoot operate out of Terminal 1 at Changi, which is unusual for budget airlines, as they're usually outcast at a remote Terminal 4. So that's one of the immediate advantages of flying Scoot over other budget airlines. The terminal was very calm at about 8 AM on a Monday, and there were so many Scoot check-in counters that we didn't have to wait at all. The e-passport gates were also extremely efficient and easy to use, and we were quickly through to the main departure zone. And personally, this is my favourite airport in the world. It just feels super calm, has good food, is visually stunning, and has loads of really comfy places to sit. And I really like how the whole place is filled with tropical plants. Now for a bit of background, Scoot are a relatively young airline, established in 2012 by Singapore Airlines as their low-cost alternative, currently serving over 70 destinations, mostly in East and Southeast Asia. With a fleet of 51 aircraft ranging from the small Embraer E190-E2 to the slightly larger Airbus A320, up to the largest 375-seat Boeing 787-9, they have a very playful and casual vibe, and their marketing is very punny, which I appreciate. They don't have cabin crew, for example, rather they're called Scooties. They don't have a company culture, but a scootitude. And they even painted one of their planes in a Pokemon livery, and everything on the plane is Pokemon themed. But the main reason I think Scoot exists is because Singapore Airlines is probably the most premium airline in the world, and by creating Scoot, they can still serve the budget end of the market and connect more passengers through Singapore without diluting the premium Singapore Airlines brand. And just as importantly, they can use it to justify their higher prices. For example, this flight today with Singapore Airlines at the same time would have cost about 50% more, after you factor in all the Scoot extra fees like seats, baggage and food. And by the way, a slight quirk of Singapore Airport is that the security is at the gate. Mildly annoying as you can't bring drinks through, but the gate area is very nice at least. Anyway, before we step on board, here are the stats and route map for today's flight, where we would just fly southeast over the Java Sea before descending down into Bali from the west to arrive pretty much exactly on time at Igusti Ngurah Rai International, Indonesia's second busiest airport. So as I mentioned earlier, we chose seats in their Scoot in Silence cabin, a small quiet cabin at the front of the plane which only allows passengers aged 12 and over. A bit gimmicky really, especially as some of the people in our section still watch stuff on their phones without headphones. But I guess the positive is you're near the front of the plane and you're guaranteed not to sit next to a crying baby or yelling child. This cabin is made up of 23 seats right at the front of the economy section, and it's slightly divided from the main economy cabin by a thin bulkhead. And on the larger Boeing 787-9, they actually have extra legroom in the Scoot in Silence cabin. Though on the smaller 787-8, the legroom is just a standard 30 to 31 inch seat pitch. And for a budget airline, that's fine I guess. But of all the Boeing 787s I've flown on to date, this is definitely the least amount of legroom I've seen. Everything else is pretty standard, though there's no entertainment system. And they do have Wi-Fi, but the prices start at 5 Singapore dollars for a whopping 20 megabytes and go up to 55 Singapore dollars for just 1 gigabyte, so I didn't think that was worth it at all. Happily, the seat in this cabin actually has an adjustable headrest, whilst the regular seats in the main cabin don't have headrests. They have a pretty good range of food and drink, and it's reasonably priced for a budget airline, so that's good. And bear in mind these prices are in Singapore dollars, so 9 Singapore dollars is equivalent to about £5 or 7 US dollars. Also, they charge you $5 for in-seat power, which I find extremely cheap. They have a fairly standard duty-free shop too, with a whole load of Scoot merch, and I was very tempted by the model planes.
Use your mobile phones and tablets, laptops and all other electronic equipment, and flammable products.
Boarding was completed relatively quickly and we pushed back on time, and it was a relatively short 5-minute taxi to the runway, so here's that. And also, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider smashing the like button and subscribing. I recently hit 5k subscribers, and now 10k seems like it might not be impossible after all. In the next few months I'll have reviews of Etihad's 787 business class, AirAsia Indonesia, the Mandarin Oriental Jakarta, Oman Air in both business and economy, plus a 15-hour flight with Cathay Pacific, so stay tuned. Then, whilst taxiing, I noticed this engineless Singapore Airlines Boeing 787-10 with all the windows boarded up. Surprising, as it's a very new plane, so I wonder what it's doing like that. Anyway, I have a review of its business class on this channel, so click the link in the description for that. A much more premium experience than Scoot. Obviously, being a budget airline, Scoot tried to sell you a boatload, or should I say plane load, of extras. This is the food selection available for pre-order, and I ordered a nasi lemak for 18 Singapore dollars 50. But a few days before the flight, I got an email from them saying it wasn't available, and that they'd switched me to a chicken curry and biryani rice. This is how they serve it, with no tray or anything, so it was a bit messy, but overall an okay meal, with the curry just tasting like a typical mild chicken korma. The lack of a tray was really annoying though, and with all the saucy food like this, it was hard not to spill anything. On the side it came with water, some Cadbury cookies which weren't great, and a little pandan sponge cake which was pretty tasty. This is what the main cabin looks like, by the way, with ours at the front separated by that bulkhead. And honestly, I would say the whole scoot and silence thing is a bit unnecessary, and plenty of noise leaks through from the main cabin, but the main benefit is that they let you off the plane first after landing, and you get those adjustable headrests. So overall, I think that's well worth the 24 Singapore dollars per person we paid for these seats. After a relatively smooth 2 hours in the air, we began our descent into Bali Denpasar. So here's a bit of that. Not a whole lot to see though, as it was mostly just ocean.
By the crew. Please be careful.
As we pull up to the gate, it's time for my final thoughts on Scoot. Overall, this was actually a pretty good experience for a budget airline. I think my opinion of them had been negatively clouded by my wife's previous flight with them from Hanoi, where she'd originally booked Singapore Airlines and they'd changed to Scoot, and she was kind enough to film that flight for me on this channel. So obviously that was a big step down when she was expecting the comfort of Singapore Airlines. But if you go into it expecting a regular budget airline experience, you might be pleasantly surprised like we were today. Though I definitely recommend paying extra for better seats. So thanks to all that, I'll give them an average score of 62.5% for this flight, and at least for short haul flights I would definitely consider flying them in the future. Though on my airline tier list I'll just pop them up from a 2 to a 4 out of 10. No longer the worst airline in my ranking, but still a step below other budget airlines like Norwegian Air and Air Asia in my opinion. And maybe controversially, I think Ryanair are better too. Now for my next video, we're going to go to the other end of the value spectrum and try out Etihad's Boeing 787 business class on a 7.5 hour flight from Jakarta to Abu Dhabi. Now this was a pretty great flight and well worth the price I paid to upgrade, so stay tuned for that video coming next week. And after that I'll have more reviews from the likes of Oman Air, Cathay Pacific and AirAsia, so stay tuned for all that as well. Thanks a lot for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and goodbye.